All right, so we got a big heavy box here from Aqua Tuning. This is a water cooling company that you guys can get parts and stuff out of, based out of Germany. It's been a long time since I've looked at anything from Aqua Tuning, but they sent a hell of a care package. I know of one item that's in here. The rest is bonus stuff. But given it's the hot summer months for most of us, except for Australia, it's weird. They just got to be backwards down there. We are going to go ahead and talk about some cooling stuff. Obviously, this is water cooling. But there's one item in here I think a lot of you guys are going to be really excited about. But before we get into today's topic, I'm going to talk to you guys about internet security and NordVPN. Now, internet security is something you should definitely take serious, especially if you're connecting to public Wi-Fis or you just care about keeping your information private, especially with all the ongoing stuff with net neutrality. NordVPN has over 4,000 servers in over 60 countries, including Africa, Asia, the Middle East, you name it, you can connect safely and securely with NordVPN. Now, my favorite part about NordVPN is they don't keep any logs, which means that you are truly surfing the internet anonymously and securely. So start securing your internet by getting 77% off a 3-year membership by heading to nordvpn.com/JayzTwoCents, or just click the link in the description below. So this is like Christmas in July. Oh, I almost threw out something important. Ow. Baseball. This is the actual part I was most excited about with this unboxing, and we'll take a look at this in a sec. We've got some tube. So this is an upcoming video. Cross-flow radiator versus a standard flow radiator. So we've also got the AlphaCool Ice Block XPX CPU. This is both Intel and AMD ready. It is an LED lit water block, so it's lit. That meme died. Woo! So this is not a nuclear football, guys. This is actually a toolkit. A toolkit has everything you could possibly need or want for rigid tube bending. You know, I'm gonna look at the manual. Anglier gerade mit Stiefenschlag. Die Eisdecktiefe beseitigt sind mit dem Stiefenschlag verwundeten. So at first, this is a bit overwhelming. As a guy who pretty much just does everything 100% by eyeball, I've never measured, I've never used any of these protractors and angled devices and bending guides and cheese plates. But I think I'm looking through the manual here and I think I'm getting it, because pretty much you have every possible type of bend you could need to do on this. It's very 3D. It's not just how it bends flat on the cheese plate. And we'll do a demonstration, obviously. This guy right here, this is the stylus stopper with very variable insertion depth. All right, so the way that these mount down, and you've got different radiuses here, obviously. So you've got 45, a 90, a 60, and a 30, and these are very common. And then these are the same measurements here, just in a little bit tighter radius. This is just an angle wheel right here, so you can bend this to get the proper angle. You could figure out a 180 or a 90. So the way this mounts down is pretty simple. You've got your long screws, you've got your wing nuts, or not really wing nuts, or thumb nuts, basically, I guess. Numb nuts, thumb nuts, whatever. And then you've got some washers. So if you wanted to mount down, say, this angle wheel, you pull the long screw up through the bottom. You can put this guy down through there, put a washer on here, and then a nut. Okay, so now this is mounted down to, I don't know if this is technically called a cheese plate, but that's what we're calling it, because that's what it's called when you mount stuff to a camera. It's a big cheese plate. And there's that. Now this is your stylus stopper. This is basically, you could be used either as just a straight guide, or you can use this to actually mark off like where the tube should stop. That would stop it from going any farther. So you could use that as your starting point and then your turn, or you can just make it a little bit too long on either side and cut it down to length, which is typically the way that I do it. But then this all mounts down literally the exact same way. Now you'll notice each one of these tools actually have two different kind of grooves in here. One's for the 12 or 13 mil pipe, and then the bigger one is for the 16 millimeter pipe. So this is basically one toolkit for all the different sizes. But whichever side is facing down is the current size you'll be working with. So I'm gonna be doing a 12 or 13 mil tube, and I'm gonna make sure that that's facing down, and then once we lock it down, we're good. So, but the bend I'm gonna try and recreate here, technically it's a double 90, but that's where you have the 90 going two different directions. Usually like coming out of the top radiator and going into the CPU block or something like that, those are usually the hardest bends to do, especially by eyeball. But in order to do that, we have this particular tool right here. You can see it's like a ramp. So this would actually mount down like this, And as you can see now, as the tubing comes along it, it will ramp upward. But the cool part is the reason why you're seeing these kind of flop all around is because these are also adjustable angle. So let's say you didn't want to go straight up, but you wanted to go up and to the side, you could do that. And you can control your angle by this angle meter. It's got all the tick marks for all the different angles right there. So this is truly a 3D piece of equipment when it comes to being able to do all your measurements. What's cool though is the measurements of the gaps in this cheese plate are perfect. Like this cannot, once it's tightened down, this won't be able to rotate because there's no play side to side. So that way you're not screwing up your angles a couple of degrees here and there because, you know, there was play in the jig. Do I have my heat guns here? I thought I did.
Is it in your truck still?
Might be under the seat. Okay, so the heat guns are not in the car. Guess we're going to Lowe's again. All right, I guess we can go finish the video. All right, now that we got our heat gun, this is actually a pretty good one. I got this from Lowe's for 39 bucks. It's got multiple settings and multiple temperatures. Like it's a temperature dial. So obviously you need to take your mandrel cord, the one that's designed for the right size tubing you're using. This one is the 13 mil. Might have to dampen it. It is a pretty tight fit. I don't normally use oil or anything like that to get it to slide in there. But I'm gonna do this bend right here first. Now you're not gonna hold the heat gun, like you're not gonna try and bend it like this, right? Because then you'll be melting all these plastics. You're gonna heat it on the table and then you're going to make, you know, you're gonna push it down on there. So let me go ahead and see if I can't get this in there a little bit farther. The tighter the mandrel fits, the less kink you're gonna get in the tubing. So that's why some of the ones that just slide in there really, really easily, this is going a really weird conversation, but the ones that slide in there really, really easily tend to, you know, give you a little bit less than desirable kink in your tube.
So the ones that slide in really easily are kinky?
Yeah, and maybe worn out. So when you're heating it up, obviously I've done a tutorial on this before. I'll try and link it. If not, just look up how to bend hardline tubing. You'll find lots of tutorials. You're just gonna go back and forth because you don't wanna heat up one particular spot. You wanna heat up a range. That way it can make a nice, smooth radius. So we're gonna wait till it starts to become a little bit malleable, whatever the word is. You guys know what I'm trying to say, I hope. See it starting to bend a little bit on me there? Get nice and hot, but not too hot. We don't want it to stretch. We're just going to apply it to our jig, like so. And we're just gonna hold it for a little bit so it can cool off. Make sure it's in there firmly. You have some time to kind of play with it too before it gets completely frozen in its position. You don't want to remove it too soon. If you do, then it will relax and start to straighten back out. We don't want that. So just take your time, let it cool off. Smells like success. There's our 90. So now we're gonna need to cut this tubing down because let's say this was our stopper point right here. We know we wanna go to 11, right? So we can kind of guesstimate like, okay, we can cut it, let's say right about here. You wanna leave a little bit more length than you think you need because obviously if you cut it too short, well, that's not gonna do you any good. So I'm gonna go ahead and rig up our jig once again, or our vise, so that we can use the included saw. So that just threads down, almost like just like a regular C-clamp almost. So you would make your marks, and they're rubber lined, which is nice, so they're not gonna scratch up your tubing. Take our included saw. This is gonna make sure we get a nice straight cut. And you're all the way through, just like that. This is your deburr tool. So you could take this and turn it on the outside. So you can see that got rid of any edges on the outside. And this does the same thing for the inside. And then it's still a little bit rough, but that's the nature of PETG because it's so soft. But yeah, there's that. So this is the mandrel I've been using all the way up to this point, but you can see it's a hollow cord. So the difference is when you thread this through and then it makes that bend, and yeah, you can actually cord it or push it through a bend. A lot of people don't realize you can do that. This can actually squish. And because it can squish, would give you a little bit of a bulge on the tube, but the solid mandrel won't do that. The only problem with the solid mandrel though is, like I said, getting it actually threaded in there is kind of a pain in the ass. We have to get it, you know, down to here So one thing I like to do though, if the mandrel won't, slide in the tube very easily, because this one definitely doesn't want to go past that point, you can just use a little bit of soap, just a tiny little bit of soap. It's easy to clean off afterward because if you rinse your tube, which you should do anyway, because hygiene is very important. Also, it gets rid of any of the possible little burrs in there from you cutting it. This should then just slide in there now. See? A little bit of soap. And then you can just rinse this in the sink let some water run through it. It'll get rid of all the soap. And now, as you can see, we've got our mandrel all the way down past where we need it. So just like before, we want to heat up a range of the tubing. It's gonna, even if it starts to sag and wobble and look a little bit crooked, our jig is gonna keep everything nice and straight with how we want it. Now this is the kind of thing that for a guy like me who's done every build you've ever seen me do up to this point completely by eyeball, or I'll use the edge of a table on the corner to get my 90, stuff like that, this would probably take me longer until I got used to using it, because you have to measure. Obviously with this one you have to measure. It shows you in the manual kind of like the type of measurements you'd want to take. This will give us completely perfect results as long as we measure properly. Not bad at all. I kind of wish this would give me a tighter radius, because I can actually get a pretty tight bend by hand. But I mean, this is still a pretty good radius angle. Wow, well, would you look at that? Not bad at all. No kinking, no crimping. And theoretically, if we'd measured properly, then this would have lined up perfectly with where our fittings would be. So that's just a quick example of how you could use a toolkit like this to get perfect bends the first time, as long as you measure twice, bend once. But let's talk about this kit and kind of who it's for. It's not entirely cheap. I mean, this is a kit designed for people who are doing this all the time. And I'm still not 100% sure if I'm gonna use it all the time. There might be some very specific bends I might try it out on. I'm just so used to my particular way of eyeballing things. There are people out there that might just wanna eyeball it like I do, and there are people out there who definitely don't feel comfortable eyeballing it, which a kit like this would make sense for. But again, it's not cheap. It definitely has a price tag associated with it, but this is you buy it once and then you can use it obviously over and over and over, your build, friends' builds, or if you're running a business where you're doing hardline tubing, obviously this makes sense. Let's say you're doing 5 builds for like a custom client or custom builds for a client, and you're building 5 identical PCs. Well, once you get it all jigged up once, you can do 5 bends back to back to back, and then they're all good to go without having to measure over and over. I can't even tell you how many times I've done the same bend 5 times in a row because I'm just a few millimeters off, and I like it to be as straight and square as possible. So you guys tell me what you think down below of AlphaCool's Ice Coffer toolkit. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Probably not, but whatever, guys. Tell me what you think down below. I'm curious if you would buy a kit like this for a one-time build, or if you wouldn't, why? Put it down below. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, we'll see you in the next one. Why does it sound like a banjo?
Focus, Jay.
Okay. No, you focus, Phil. You're the one laughing. Get to the chopper. Now, do it. One of the things I used to do around here is I did an Arnold thing all the time. And then people used to be like, yeah, do the Arnold when you do the live streaming. There went the last brain cell.